Hey guys, tonight we begin our journey not with footsteps, but with a scent, sharp, warm, and slightly sweet. You're standing on a wind-swept ridge in what is now southern Arabia, and the air smells like something between incense and ambition. Down below, along a shimmering ribbon of desert track, men lead camels piled high with sacks. You can't see what's inside them yet, but the smell, oh the smell, is giving it away. You're not here to conquer, build, or philosophize. You're here because someone, somewhere, is willing to pay a small fortune for the right kind of bark. Cinnamon, to be exact. Not the kind in your latte, but the original kind, scraped from wild trees clinging to sun-blasted hills, and shipped thousands of miles to perfume emperors' robes and sweeten wine for pharaohs. It's a world where a spoonful of nutmeg can be worth more than gold. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening somewhere interesting, say, beside your spice rack or wrapped in a cinnamon-scented blanket, drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe fluff your pillows, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start with the Egyptians. Yes, those pyramid people. Long before the Silk Road was even a dusty idea, the Egyptians were importing frankincense and myrrh from the land of Punt. No one's entirely sure where Punt was. Historians still argue whether it was in modern-day Somalia, Eritrea, or Yemen. But they all agree on one thing. The stuff from there smelled amazing. So amazing, in fact, that Queen Hatshepsut had an entire expedition carved into the walls of her mortuary temple to brag about it. In your sandals and linen robes, you shuffle along a stone-paved dock in Thebes, watching as men unload crates of aromatic resin and strange trees from reed boats. This is not your average Tuesday shipment. Spices are being hoarded for temples, medicine, and rituals. And if you're lucky, maybe you'll get a whiff of cassia as it's pounded into the oils used to anoint mummies. Jump forward a few centuries, and you're now part of a merchant caravan crawling across the sands of Arabia. Spices are so precious, they travel under guard, nestled between bolts of silk and beads of glass. The camels have opinions. They spit, they groan, they sit when they should stand. But without them, the ancient incense trails would never have existed. It's not all desert. You stop at watering holes that are more like tiny cities, palm-ringed oases full of gossip, trade, and suspiciously strong-smelling stews. Every trader has their own story. One claims to have bought cinnamon directly from the source, though he's suspiciously vague about what that source is. Another swears that peppercorns come from dragons who must be tricked with smoke. Do you believe them? You nod politely and keep chewing. These stories, as ridiculous as they sound, served a purpose. The Arabs, who acted as middlemen for much of the spice trade, weren't just selling goods. They were selling mystery. The more magical the origin, the higher the price. You can't just say, oh yes, pepper grows in India. No, you need dragons, enchanted groves, and perilous journeys through crocodile-infested rivers. Speaking of crocodiles, remember that time Egyptian priests used crocodile dung as sunscreen? That's a different tangent, but trust me, the ancient world was full of questionable uses for exotic imports. Back to your current trail. You reach a port, probably in Yemen or Oman, where the sacks of spice are repacked onto wooden ships bound for India and beyond. The Red Sea glints like polished bronze in the sun, and the air smells like salt and sandalwood. You can almost hear the voices of sailors arguing over whether the monsoon winds will be favourable this year. And just like that, the spices are gone, out to sea toward places you've never even heard of. But you? You stay behind, sitting cross-legged by the docks, watching as the sails shrink to white specks on the horizon. Your fingers still smell like cardamom, and your coin pouch is a little heavier than before. You don't know it yet, but these spices you've helped move, however briefly, will end up in Roman perfumes, Chinese broths, Ethiopian incense burners, and Renaissance pastries. You won't be remembered in the books, but your hands, tired and calloused, helped flavor the future. Now you're on the move again, this time not on the sea, but trudging behind a caravan somewhere near Petra. The sun is unforgiving, and the wind has no chill, only dust. You're part of a long, snaking procession of traders, beasts, and jangling copper bells. Welcome to the land route, the beating, blistered heart of the ancient overland spice trade. You're not alone. Around you are camels, the grumpy and indispensable ships of the desert. Their hooves pad the sand in slow rhythm, their eyelids flutter against blowing grit, and their breath smells like a mix of hay and opinion. Camels are famously unbothered by your human struggles, but you're sweating like a spice seller in a customs line. The caravan's precious cargo includes cinnamon from Ceylon, cardamom from Kerala, and a little side stash of powdered lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. But it's not just goods travelling this way. You hear 7 different languages on any given day. Some merchants wear Roman togas, others wear loose robes or striped scarves that signal their origin from Arabia Felix, happy Arabia, though you haven't met anyone here who seems especially cheerful. Tonight, you make camp near an oasis. The fires flicker low as dates are passed around, and someone starts a story about a spice merchant who once lost an entire shipment of cloves to a mirage. Whether it's true or just desert delirium, you laugh, quietly, because your boots still feel full of sand. And somehow, despite the discomfort, this world feels familiar. The smell of cumin in goat stew, the sound of the camels groaning themselves to sleep. It's comforting, in a strange and spicy way. But the route isn't all storytelling and stew. Bandits are a real concern. You've passed by the remains of wrecked caravans, smashed pottery, scattered dates, and sometimes a lonely sandal, half buried in sand. Some traders travel under the protection of local kings, who charge escort fees that are really just nicer-sounding bribes. Historians still argue whether these fees were fair tolls or thinly veiled extortion. What's certain is that without these guards, you'd be walking back to Babylon barefoot and broke. So you pay the toll, share your garlic flatbread with the nearest soldier, and try to forget that one of the camels has been giving you the side-eye since dawn. And Petra. Oh, Petra. When you finally arrive, it rises like a dream carved into pink stone. The city is a kaleidoscope of domed roofs, incense smoke, and people haggling loudly over spices, silk, and silver. You unload your goods and haggle yourself, trading a few jars of black pepper for silk scarves and a small bottle of something called rose attar, which smells suspiciously like a flower trying too hard. Here, spices aren't just a trade. They're currency, medicine, and status. Rich families pay for cinnamon to mask the smell of their camels. Doctors use clove oil to numb teeth. Priests burn incense in temples while insisting it has spiritual, not cosmetic purposes. You smile and sell to them all. But trade is not just about movement, it's about pause. You stay in Petra for a week, and every night feels like a festival. Somewhere near the outskirts, a Greek merchant tells you that cinnamon is actually fished from the Nile using nets and dried on rocks. You don't correct him. Why ruin the magic? One afternoon, an Egyptian woman offers you a small scroll in exchange for a handful of nutmeg. The scroll turns out to be a recipe for spiced wine meant to be shared during lunar eclipses. You try it. It tastes like fermented raisins and regret. Still, you copy the recipe down. Who knows? Someone in Babylon might love it. Then it's time to move again. Your camels are loaded. Your pack is heavier with silk and stories, and your sandals feel a size too small. But that's the life of a spice trader. You carry not just goods, but tales, bits of laughter, whispers of gods, and the lingering scent of something that came from a faraway tree. As the sun begins to set behind the sandstone cliffs, you take one last look at the city carved from dreams and turn your face east, where the next route and the next mystery await. Your feet leave the dust of the desert behind, and now you stand where land ends and water begins. This is the Cinnamon Coast, southern India, where the spice-slick air clings to your skin and the sea hums with the arrival of the monsoon. You're no longer walking beside camels. Now you're aboard a ship, a broad-bellied wooden dhow, riding swells that smell like salt, sweat, and cargo dreams. The sails flap like laundry above you, stained from years of sun and sea. Below deck, sacks of pepper, turmeric, cardamom, and cinnamon shift with every wave, whispering against one another like tired merchants sharing gossip. You lie on deck, squinting at the pale sky, trying not to think about how seasick you were this morning. Everyone pretends it gets better after the third voyage. You suspect they're lying. Your ship hugs the Malabar coast, a region so steeped in spice that you'd swear even the mosquitoes taste like cumin. At Kozhikode, you can call it Calicut, you dock among hundreds of boats from Arabia, China, Africa, and further still. Some bring gold, some bring horses, some just bring wide-eyed apprentices, scribbling down every cent and seasoning in their travel journals. You step into the market, and immediately the world becomes a blur of colour and aroma. The air is thick with frying mustard seeds and boiling tamarind. Somewhere nearby, a man yells about the purity of his black pepper like it's a sacred oath. Another waves a stalk of lemongrass in your face, as if it can cure your seasickness, which, admittedly, it might. Trade here is fast, layered, and competitive. Prices shift with the wind. You watch a Chinese sailor trade a block of fermented tea for saffron, only to resell that saffron moments later for a carved ivory comb. There's a rhythm to it, a kind of dance, and it's hypnotic, if occasionally exhausting. But it's not all wheeling and dealing. This is also where stories trade hands. A Portuguese explorer swears he's seen dragons guarding the cinnamon forests of Ceylon. A Somali merchant claims clove trees sing when it rains. Historians still argue whether early sea traders truly believed such tales, or just told them to impress potential buyers. You wander through a spice warehouse with slatted windows, where sunbeams catch on clouds of ginger dust and turn the room golden. Here, amid the sacks and bundles, you discover something odd. A tiny bundle wrapped in palm leaf, labelled in Sanskrit. Inside is long pepper, hotter and spikier than black pepper, once prized by Romans but now nearly forgotten. This dusty little spice, almost extinct on your side of the world, feels like a secret. You pocket it, thinking it might impress someone back in Baghdad or Venice. Maybe you'll even make up a story about how it was stolen from a temple guarded by tiger priests. Who's to say? Back on the dhow, the crew is preparing for the long sail west, across the Arabian Sea toward Africa. You'll ride the monsoon winds, a kind of ancient GPS powered by the gods. The journey is tricky, sometimes smooth, sometimes furious. A storm can appear out of nowhere, tossing your cargo and soaking your hopes. You tie your belongings down and lie back on a coil of rope, listening to the sea slap the hull. One sailor sings to the stars in a language you don't recognize, while another tries to carve his name into the mast using a spoon. You offer him a bit of candied ginger. He accepts, then offers you a strange fish charm in return. Trade, even here, never really stops. As dawn breaks, the sun slices the ocean into a trail of gold. You follow it west, watching the coast of India dissolve behind you. The scent of cinnamon lingers on your fingers. Ahead lies a new shore, a new market, a new tale to add to the one swirling in your head. You don't know it yet, but this stretch of ocean, this route, will one day connect continents, conquerors, and cuisines. But for now, it's just you, the waves, a few wet spices, and the vague hope that the next port has dry socks. You arrive just after dusk, your ship creaking into the port of Basra, gateway to the heart of the Abbasid Caliphate. The sky is a violet haze, the docks are chaos, and the air smells like roasted cumin and coal smoke. You've crossed oceans, hugged coasts, dodged storms, and now you plunge into a city that never seems to sleep, where the spice trade doesn't merely exist, it thrives with theatrical flair. Basra is a place where you could lose your sandal, your sense of direction, and your entire week's earnings in a single market square. You step into the great bazaar and it hits you like a sensory ambush. Strings of chili peppers hang like garlands, pyramids of saffron glow like little golden mountains. Hawkers shout prices in Arabic, Persian, Swahili, and at least 3 dialects you don't dare try to identify. You find yourself drifting between spice stalls and book dealers, a strange but fitting combination, because here, In the golden age of Islam, traders aren't just moving goods, they're moving knowledge. One booth sells black cumin next to a hand-copied manuscript on the digestive virtues of said cumin. Another displays clove-infused ink sold to poets who believe it sharpens metaphors. And then there's the date vendor, who insists that if you grind his special fennel seeds into a paste and recite a verse from the Quran while applying it behind your ear, you'll never forget a face. You try it, the paste burns. You're unconvinced, still it's cheaper than therapy. Wandering deeper into the spice quarter, you hear laughter and lute music wafting from a corner tea house. Inside, scholars debate the medicinal uses of cardamom over tiny cups of heavily sweetened brew. Historians still argue whether Abbasid physicians truly believed in humoral theory, or were just being politely non-committal to avoid arguments with rich patrons. You listen to a story told in hushed tones, of a merchant who smuggled a handful of saffron bulbs hidden inside a rolled-up carpet and accidentally introduced them to Andalusia. Was it true? Probably not. But the storyteller's voice is hypnotic, and the steam from your tea curls upward like a lazy genie. At night, the market changes its face. Lanterns flicker like fireflies, casting dancing shadows over spices that seem to come alive in the soft glow. Nutmeg takes on a mysterious shimmer. Star anise gleams like carved obsidian. You spot a shadowy figure trading what looks like cinnamon bark wrapped in silk, though the wrapping might be more valuable than the spice. A Persian apothecary catches your eye. His stall is a wonder of drawers, bottles, and bubbling concoctions. You ask for something to ease your sore feet. He hands you a balm made from camphor, cardamom, and something he refers to cryptically as phoenix flower. You decide not to ask questions and slather it on. He also sells powdered myrrh mixed with crushed pearls, allegedly an ancient deodorant used by queens. You wonder if Cleopatra would have smelled like this. Probably more like politics and wine, but still. The bazaar doesn't sleep. Not really. Long past midnight, you hear the low murmur of negotiation in dark alleyways. Some are haggling for cinnamon, others for secrets. The spice trade, after all, was rarely just about spice. Here in Baghdad's shadow, flavor meant power. Those who controlled the caravans controlled influence. A dash of nutmeg could mean the difference between medicine and poison, seduction and suspicion. The lines blur, like incense smoke curling into the rafters. You pass a beggar who offers to trade a riddle for a pinch of saffron. You oblige. He asks, "What is always tasted but never eaten?" You consider the question for a moment, then shrug. "Spice," he says, grinning. You nod. Fair enough. By morning, you're back at the docks. Your satchel full of saffron, turmeric, dried rose petals, and a bundle of basil that smells nothing like the basil you know. The shipmaster yells, and it's time to sail again. Onward. Always onward. As the boat pulls away from the dock, Basra fades into the mist of early morning, still humming with life behind you. And as you lean on the rail, fingers stained gold from handling turmeric, you realize something strange. You haven't eaten anything bland in weeks. You're balancing on the edge of a teak deck now, somewhere in the choppy waters near the South China Sea. The ship beneath your feet is a Chinese junk, broad, high-sterned, sturdy enough to shoulder monsoons, and suspiciously comfortable compared to the creaking dhow you left behind. The sails are bat-winged and red as dried chili. You are officially in the orbit of the Song dynasty. The crew moves like clockwork, efficient and mostly uninterested in you unless you're in the way, which, to be fair, you usually are. You've brought pepper and frankincense. They're offering porcelain, silk and tea. But the real prize here? Recipes. Recipes written in delicate calligraphy and traded like treasure maps. As you sail toward Guangzhou, you begin to notice something. This part of the trade route runs on structure. Everything is regulated. Your cargo is tallied. Your entry timed, your fees meticulously calculated. Even your tea is poured with mathematical grace. You sip it while trying to pronounce words from a Cantonese phrasebook, getting only polite smiles in return. Guangzhou is enormous. It smells like hot sesame oil and wet bamboo. The docks are alive with shouting, drumming and chickens that apparently serve no purpose other than panicking loudly. There's a customs official inspecting crates of nutmeg with the solemnity of a scholar. He sniffs, scribbles, nods, and then waves you on. Once inside the city, The market is less chaotic than in Basra, but no less dazzling. Stalls are orderly, arranged by category: dried goods, wet goods, medicinal curiosities, fermented mysteries. You spot star anise, shaped like little 8-pointed spells, Szechuan pepper that makes your tongue go numb, and a vendor selling cinnamon that looks like dragon scales. You overhear two bureaucrats debating which spice best cools the body during summer. One argues for mint, the other for mung bean. Historians still argue whether traditional Chinese medicine was more empirical or philosophical, but here on the street, it's both a science and a ritual, passed down like a family song. You're invited to a banquet by a merchant who's suspiciously eager to offload a barrel of slightly mouldy turmeric. You go anyway. The dishes are exquisite. Duck glazed in 5-spice syrup, soups spiked with dried ginger, desserts that somehow manage to be both floral and chewy. At one point, you're served a bowl of noodles with bits of candied orange peel and something that might be dried plum or not plum. Someone toasts you with a rice wine steeped in rose petals. Another guest confides that his ancestors once smuggled clove buds sewn into their collars to avoid imperial tariffs. The room laughs. Trade, here, has always danced just along the edge of the rules. And espionage? It's a whisper in the shadows. You hear about foreign traders trying to sneak tea plants back west, about recipes encoded in poetry, and once, a Persian scholar who allegedly hid saffron bulbs in hollowed-out bamboo pens. Whether any of it's true? That depends on how many bowls of plum wine you've had. The next morning, you stagger down narrow alleys scented with sesame and scallion, past homes with carved wooden screens and laundry fluttering like prayer flags. You buy a small pouch of dried chrysanthemum and a scroll with a faint recipe for something called cloud buns. You don't know how to make them, but the name alone is worth a few coins. In one courtyard, an elderly woman is drying ginger on woven trays. She hands you a piece, tells you it will protect you from storms. You thank her and chew slowly. It's hot enough to make your eyebrows tingle. Your ship leaves at dawn, sails full, stomach fuller. The Chinese junk pulls away smoothly from the pier, and as Guangzhou fades behind you, you realise something. This leg of the spice journey isn't just about trade, it's about memory, about flavours that hold meaning far beyond the kitchen. You sit on deck and watch the sea stretch ahead like a silk ribbon. You're headed for islands now, mysterious, volcanic, and rich with flavour. You wrap yourself in a robe you traded for, sip from a clay flask, and savour the burning ginger still lingering on your tongue. You smell the islands before you see them. The air grows thicker, headier, like a perfume shop that's thrown open its windows to the tropics. You lean over the side of your boat, eyes scanning the horizon, and there, just rising from the mist, are the Spice Islands, the Moluccas. A scatter of emerald dots in an endless blue sea, holding secrets older than empire and scents stronger than memory. This is where the world's obsession begins. Not in Rome, not in Venice, not even in India. Right here, where clove trees bloom like shy stars, and nutmeg hangs from branches like tiny golden eggs. You step ashore on Ternate, a volcanic island that trembles with both tectonic and economic intensity. Here, the sultans rule with a mixture of spice, steel, and ceremonial umbrellas the size of dinner tables. You wipe your brow. It's humid enough to steam a fish just by thinking about it, and follow a winding path up to the royal court, where trade is theatre. The Sultan greets you with grace and a faint smile that says, "I know you're here for my nutmeg, and yes, it'll cost you. The clove trees are sacred here, not metaphorically, actually sacred. Locals perform rituals before harvest, offering coconut, song, and the occasional chicken. You're invited to watch. A priest sprinkles water onto the roots, murmurs a chant, then motions for harvesters to begin. They move with reverence, barefoot, collecting cloves in baskets woven from palm. Historians still argue whether these rituals were religious rites or just early labour union meetings disguised as mysticism. Either way, the cloves are real, and the prices are not open to negotiation. Further east, On Banda, nutmeg rules. The entire economy here is built on this one seed. The trees are delicate, prone to mood swings, and fiercely protected. You're told of a time when an entire grove was guarded by geese, feral, hissing, surprisingly territorial geese. You doubt the geese were effective, but the image stays with you. Your lodging is a bamboo hut near the shore. Nights here are restless. Between the chirping of cicadas and the boom of waves against volcanic rock, sleep comes in slow layers. One evening you attend a moonlit feast, where a spiced fish stew is served in coconut shells, and a dancer moves with a clove blossom tucked behind one ear. The music is a soft rhythm of drums and wind flutes. You don't know the steps, but your foot taps anyway. You barter with locals using woven cloth, coral beads, and once, awkwardly, a poorly carved wooden spoon you tried to pass off as ceremonial. It didn't work, but there's no denying the quality of the spices. A single clove from these islands holds more scent than a whole jar back in Baghdad. Nutmeg here isn't just a kitchen flavour, it's a cure, a sedative, a whisper of magic. Some believe it wards off plague, others think it induces visions. One trader swears he chewed nutmeg once and spoke fluent Portuguese for a week. And then there's mace, the lacy red membrane that wraps around the nutmeg seed. Fragile, aromatic, and almost completely unknown to the outside world at this point in history. You touch it gently, like a secret. You buy a small bundle and store it in a linen pouch, unsure whether to sell it, sniff it, or steep it in wine. You hear stories of traders who tried to smuggle seedlings out, only to be caught, fined, or worse. These islands are fiercely protective. Spice isn't just business here, it's blood, memory, and ritual. One night, while resting near the grove, you meet an old gardener. His hands are stained with sap, his back bent from years of tending trees. He tells you, through a translator, that the cloves speak if you listen, especially at dusk. You lean in, squint, and hear, well, nothing. But the moment is golden, and you pretend you do. When you leave, your boat is heavier than before, laden with cloves, nutmeg, mace, and stories that shimmer like oil on water. You look back at the islands, the volcano still puffing smoke like an impatient chef, and wonder if you'll ever return. You dip your fingers into your spice pouch, breathe in the scent, and smile. You might not be royalty, but right now, you smell richer than a king. The canals shimmer gold beneath your gondola, and the air smells not of sea or salt, but of cinnamon, clove, and cold calculation. Welcome to Venice. You've traded camels for canals, sails for oars, and bustling ports for a city that floats somewhere between a dream and a marketplace. You duck beneath stone archways, your boat gliding past rows of palazzos that lean like gossips. This is the 15th century's most glamorous bottleneck. If Europe wants spice, it has to go through Venice, and Venice knows it. At the Rialto market you see it all. Jars of saffron stored like treasure behind iron grills, pepper packed so tightly it crackles when scooped, and nutmeg locked away like it's explosive. And in a way it is, economically at least. A few sacks of nutmeg can pay for a ship, a villa, or a not-so-accidental poisoning. The options are endless. The merchants here wear silk, quote Latin, and never blink during negotiations. You, on the other hand, are still trying to make sense of the paperwork. Everything requires a stamp, a counter-signature, and, if you're unlucky, a bribe disguised as coffee money. But you learn fast. You have to. Venice doesn't suffer slow learners. You enter a spice guildhouse, a room that smells like all of India at once and hums with low conversation. There's a table covered in maps, each one showing routes through Alexandria, Constantinople, and Aleppo. A Venetian merchant in absurdly poofy sleeves traces a finger along a line and says, "All of Europe's flavour comes through this corridor." He's not wrong. Venice has made itself the gatekeeper. Goods from the east funnel into this city, and from here out to Paris, London, and the kitchens of every overeager noble who thinks saffron makes up for bad cooking. But not everyone is happy about it. You hear whispers in taverns, of Portuguese explorers trying to bypass the overland routes, of Spanish monarchs funding voyages to sail around the problem. One grizzled trader mutters that if Venice doesn't watch its back, it'll choke on its own pepper. Historians still argue whether Venice's dominance was built on clever strategy or just very good timing. Probably both. Either way, they weren't shy about using monopolies, price fixing, and occasionally just borrowing someone else's ship design. One day, you wander into a glassblower's workshop. He's making tiny spice jars, delicate, colourful, and meant only for display in kitchens where no one actually cooks. You ask him if he's ever tasted the spices himself. He shrugs and says, "Too expensive," then hands you a small scoop of crushed cloves, just to smell. That night, you're invited to a merchant banquet. Long tables gleam with roasted pigeons dusted in cinnamon, creamy sauces rich with saffron, and honey cakes spiced with ginger. The food is decadent, sure, but also strangely unfamiliar. The spices taste distant, filtered through trade, taxation, and time. It's a reminder. Every bite here has travelled more than you have. You sit next to a spice accountant. Yes, that's a real thing, who tracks price fluctuations of pepper by the week. He tells you that when the Black Death swept through Europe, clove prices actually rose. People believed the strong smell could protect them from illness. He chuckles. Death and profit always share a table. One afternoon, you follow a back alley to a quieter part of the city, where old women sit by windows grinding herbs and muttering recipes. Here, spice isn't luxury, it's tradition. You see a grandmother using star anise to ease her grandson's cough. Another stuffs bay leaves into her laundry chest to ward off moths and bad dreams. These are the stories that won't make it into ledgers, but they're part of the trade too. As you prepare to leave Venice, your satchel bulges with spices, coins, and one incredibly smug pigeon you accidentally adopted from the docks. You glance back at the city, already receding into mist, its towers and domes softened by sea air and distance. Venice may be the queen of spice for now, but you can feel it. Change is coming. The seas are calling, and somewhere a ship is being built with room enough for dreams, pepper, and just enough rum to survive a voyage into the unknown. The ocean sprawls before you like a great, glittering mystery, and somewhere out there, west of maps and east of common sense, men are trying to sail to India by not going to India at all. You're aboard one of those ships now, the deck groaning beneath you, sails puffing with uncertainty, and a crew who've brought more faith than fresh water. This is the age of exploration, when just go west was somehow a business strategy. Your fellow voyagers include a nervous priest, 2 barrel makers, and a man who claims to have eaten nutmeg-stewed dolphin. The ship smells like wet rope, dried fish, and hope that hasn't yet spoiled. You've brought peppercorns to trade and cinnamon to impress, but no one really knows what you'll find. Least of all Columbus, who's currently arguing with a map and ignoring the clouds forming to the west. By day, it's blue sky and sea spray. By night, you huddle under the stars, trying to remember which way is which. Someone says if you look hard enough, you can smell spice on the breeze. You try. You mostly just smell your socks. Eventually, land rises into view, but it's not India. It's something new, humid, green, and buzzing with life. The New World, they'll call it, though to the people already living there, it's been fairly old and well organized. You trade beads for maize, smile nervously, and pretend that your map isn't upside down. You soon hear tales from inland, a bark that cures fever, leaves that numb the tongue, beans so bitter they make water taste like gold. Cacao, tobacco, chili, all waiting to be misunderstood by European cooks for centuries. You hop ships again, this time with Vasco da Gama, who, unlike Columbus, actually does reach India. He lands in Calicut and immediately begins trying to explain why he brought wool as a trade good. The locals are not impressed. They've seen better gifts from tourists. Still, trade begins. Slowly. Awkwardly. With much mispronunciation and a few misfires. Historians still argue whether da Gama's voyage was diplomacy or glorified looting. Probably both. But what's clear is this: the land routes are no longer the only way. The spice trade has become a game of oceans. You watch as Portuguese forts rise like stony mushrooms along the coasts: Goa, Malacca, Hormuz, each one a stepping stone in a leapfrog race across seas. The ships become bigger, the ambitions louder, the maps fuller, and the cargo? Oh, the cargo flows. From the Banda Islands, nutmeg sails west. From Calicut, pepper fills hulls. From Lisbon, returns come in the form of silver, bells, and slightly exaggerated travel journals. Back in Europe, you hear rumours of cinnamon forests so vast they make perfume from the wind. Someone swears there's a fountain in Sumatra that flows with clove oil. No one asks for proof. One day you're standing in a port in Mozambique, watching Portuguese ships unload while Arab dhows prepare to leave. Spices move both ways now, along old routes and new. It's like watching rivers braid together, tense, tangled, and surprisingly beautiful. There's a young sailor on the pier with cinnamon behind his ear and dreams in his pockets. He asks if the world is smaller now. You shrug. It's not smaller, just more complicated. You leave Africa bound for Lisbon, your ship heavy with nutmeg, mace, and two small parrots with uncertain temperaments. As the sails rise and the horizon stretches, you realize you've just watched history pivot on water. The old spice routes still breathe, but the winds have changed. No longer just desert and caravan. Now it's compass and cannon, globe and greed. And you? You're part of it. Perched between centuries, nose full of cloves, wondering if any of this will make your food taste better. The docks are quiet now. Too quiet. You're standing at the edge of a harbour in Amsterdam, and the water glistens under a grey sky that always seems 2 sighs away from rain. The ships are massive, hulking beasts with sails like patched-up wings, their hulls fat with secrets. This isn't the age of discovery anymore. This is the age of control. Welcome to the world of spice espionage. You've stepped into a time when cloves and nutmeg are no longer just flavour, they're fuel. Entire wars are fought for a handful of seeds, and the Dutch East India Company, Verenigde Oostindische Company, if you're feeling multilingual, is the quietly terrifying force behind much of it. They call it VOC, but it could just as well stand for Very Organised Conquerors. You wander the warehouses. They stretch for blocks, brick fortresses stuffed to the rafters with cinnamon, mace and documents so detailed they'd make a monk cry. Everything is accounted for, every seed tracked, every merchant watched. Inside one of these warehouses, you see a single crate of nutmeg, labelled with more caution than a barrel of gunpowder. A clerk in a stiff collar explains that these came from Bandanera. And no, you may not sniff them without gloves. You thank him and quietly steal a look anyway. Amsterdam smells like ambition. Not the warm kind, but the sharp scent of ink, tar and new money. Merchants stroll with polished boots and clipped accents. One offers you a clove-infused cordial. It burns on the way down, more reminder than refreshment. But not everyone plays by the company's rules. In back alleys and ship holds, spice smugglers run quiet operations. You meet one, a wiry man with a French accent and 3 coats. He offers to sell you nutmeg trees. Not the spice, trees. Saplings smuggled from the Banda Islands in false bottom crates. Illegal, dangerous, and possibly very profitable. You decline. Mostly because you're not sure how to care for a tree on a ship. There's talk of a botanical war. The French want to grow their own nutmeg. The British are scheming in the background, sending botanists disguised as priests. Historians still argue whether the botanical gardens of the 18th century were science labs or covert spice laboratories. You think? Probably both. In Batavia, modern-day Jakarta, you see what happens when monopolies go unchecked. The VOC builds forts beside spice groves, sets prices, and burns excess supply to keep profits high. You stand in a market where cloves are more regulated than gold, and where asking the wrong question can get you noticed by the wrong official. At one point, you visit a spice drying field. Mace lays in neat rows, the red filaments curling as they dry. It's beautiful, like autumn leaves, if autumn could pay for a small fleet. You help turn the mace with a wooden rake. The smell clings to your hands for days. And then there are the black markets. Deep inside Lisbon, London, and even Istanbul, merchants slip sachets of smuggled nutmeg into sleeves, hollowed books, and the folds of elaborate wigs. You're offered some by a barmaid who seems far too knowledgeable about maritime shipping codes. She tells you of a Dutch officer who once swallowed a clove seed wrapped in wax to smuggle it into Suriname. He survived, barely. You nod slowly and pretend you're not chewing your own sleeve. Back in Amsterdam, you watch a mapmaker ink tiny clove trees into an island he swears he's never visited. "I hear they sing when it rains," he says. You're not sure if he means the trees or the people. As the fog rolls in across the canal, you realize the spice trade is no longer just about trade. It's politics, piracy, and paperwork. It's explorers turned couriers, botanists turned spies, and merchants turned millionaires. You leave Amsterdam with a pouch of mace, a slip of paper detailing a totally legal clove shipment, and a sense that flavour has never been so fiercely protected. The spices still taste the same, but now they carry the weight of maps, secrets, and whispered scheme. You're home now, or at least somewhere with wooden floors, a cluttered kitchen, and that one drawer that always smells faintly of old curry and cinnamon. The spice routes, in all their sunburned, windswept, rain-drenched glory, have led you right here, to your cupboard. You open it. A tin of ground turmeric, faded and half-caked. A glass jar of peppercorns. A plastic baggie labelled bay leaves, even though you're pretty sure that's not what they are. And cinnamon sticks. Slender, curled, delicate, smelling faintly of somewhere far away. You pick one up and think, this tiny shard of bark once sparked wars, powered empires, and sat in the same holds as mutinies, marriage contracts, and mouldy oranges. And now it's here, waiting to be dropped into your oatmeal. The global sprawl of the spice trade has shrunk into a kitchen ritual. A pinch of clove in a mulled wine, a dash of nutmeg in your grandmother's pie recipe, a single saffron thread, floating in rice like a golden whisper from Persia. You visit a modern spice shop. It's tidy, air-conditioned, and smells like a high-end bakery. The clerk talks about flavour profiles and sustainable sourcing. You smile and nod, resisting the urge to explain that once you saw a man use star anise to bribe his way onto a ship in Malacca. The jars here have labels in 6 languages. Their contents come from everywhere and nowhere. The routes that carried them have vanished into jet trails, refrigerated containers, and GPS-tracked shipments. You can get cinnamon in 2 days now, shipped to your door in a box that also contains phone chargers and cat food. But the legacy remains. In Ethiopia, families still burn frankincense at dawn. In Indonesia, nutmeg is stirred into soups with the same reverence as centuries ago. In India, cardamom dances in sweets given at weddings. The roots may be gone, but the rhythm of the spices lingers. Historians still argue whether the age of spice shaped the modern world or merely flavoured it. You think it's both. You sit at your kitchen table with a cup of spiced tea. The steam curls upward, carrying with it hints of places you've never seen but somehow know. You close your eyes. A boat rocks beneath your feet. A market chatters around you. A breeze carries whispers of clove and clamour. The world is small now, but its flavours are vast. You reach into your cupboard and pull out a tiny jar of mace. You open it. You smile. Just for a moment, you are everywhere. So here you are, drifting now, past ports and palaces, long-lost deserts and distant coasts. The waves that once rocked your boat have quieted into ripples of memory. And those spices? They're no longer heavy sacks on your back or guarded bundles of treasure. They're just the gentle scent of a story well-travelled. Let it fade. Feel the slow sway of your thoughts like a ship in calm water. Let the cinnamon, cardamom, and peppercorns roll out of view, like stars dimming in a twilight sky. The rush of the market is gone. No more shouting vendors, no more jostling carts, just the soft creak of wood, the hush of sails, the distant sigh of a sea breeze coming to rest. You're not chasing the spice anymore, you've arrived. The world has quieted. Its flavour lingers, yes, but it no longer calls for motion. You've traced the map all the way to its quietest corner. Breathe, slow and deep. You've wandered roads carved by camels and currents pulled by moons. You've heard stories woven from bark and resin, from leaves and longing. Now, all of that rests gently in your mind, like spices settling to the bottom of a simmering stew. Sleep now, traveller of flavours. Your journey is done. The roots will still be there tomorrow. palace air is thick with incense and desert heat. You stand barefoot on polished alabaster, robes lightly rustling, as servants move silently around you. You're heading to bed, but it's not the flop-down, pull-the-covers affair you might imagine. In fact, the pharaoh's bed isn't even what you'd call soft. The mattress is elevated, carved from cedar, and gilded with gold leaf. Beautiful? Yes. Comfy? Only if you enjoy sleeping on art. The frame is low and stiff, raised just enough to allow air to circulate beneath. Cooling breezes from carefully placed openings glide over your feet. You lie down slowly, adjusting your limbs, as though preparing for a very stylish mummy photo shoot. And then there's the pillow, or rather, the headrest. It's not fluffy. It's not even flat. It's a curved stone or wood pedestal shaped like a saddle, meant to cradle your neck while elevating your skull. Why? Because the Egyptians believed the head was sacred, the seat of divine essence. Can't just let that roll around on linen like a common melon. You try to get comfortable. Your spine feels like it's lying on a ceremonial breadboard. But hey, you're royalty. Your job is to model the ideal human form, even in sleep. Nearby, your sandals sit neatly aligned with a carved ivory stool. On it, a small gold tray holds a sip of date wine and a piece of fig cake, just enough to sweeten your breath for the gods, who may pop in unannounced during your dreams. The walls around you? Covered in intricate painted murals, stars drifting across dark ceilings, lotus flowers blooming near sacred cows. Historians still argue whether these decorations were purely symbolic or helped induce lucid dreaming. Either way, it's a lot to look at when you're trying to wind down. You breathe in. The scent of frankincense clings to everything, your linens, your hands, even your eyebrows. A servant adjusts the curtain, filtering the moonlight just right. It gleams off your gold toe ring. No one mentions it, but yes, you're wearing one. Standard issue. Suddenly, the silence is broken by a soft tap, tap, tap. It's the royal chamberlain announcing that the purification priest is ready. Of course he is. You haven't even begun the real rituals yet. But for now, you're here, lying as still as a painted pharaoh on a tomb wall. The bed feels a little less stiff. The air moves like a whisper. You shift your neck against the cold curve of the headrest and try not to think about the fact that this exact sleeping position is also used for burial. Still, you're not dead. You're just mostly horizontal, kind of regal, and definitely hoping no one drops a scorpion in your sandals overnight. The room hasn't cooled much. Even with its sandstone walls and strategically placed vents, Egyptian nights can feel like you're sleeping inside a slow cooker. But heat is part of the ritual. Sweat is cleansing after all. And as you lie on your golden breadboard of a bed, it's time for the next phase of your royal bedtime routine. Becoming a human perfume tray. A procession of attendants shuffles in, each one carrying tiny alabaster jars. The air turns syrupy with scent, myrrh, cinnamon, lotus, frankincense, and a few ingredients modern noses probably wouldn't recognize. One servant holds a long-handled ivory wand and begins dabbing a thick paste just below your ears. It tingles, burns a little, and smells like the kind of spice that could summon a god, or scare off a mosquito. Possibly both. These ointments aren't just for hygiene, they're symbolic. You are being scented into a state of divine readiness. In the ancient Egyptian worldview, sleeping was a rehearsal for dying. Each night you crossed into the duat, the underworld, only to return if the gods deemed you worthy. So you had to smell the part, no pressure. Your armpits are anointed with cinnamon oil. Your temples get hit with kifi, a mixture made from wine, raisins, honey, and 16 other ingredients crushed together until it becomes the world's most expensive dab of aromatherapy goo. Historians still argue whether kifi was used more as medicine or as a spiritual portal. Either way, you're now both fragrant and faintly sticky. At your feet, an attendant slowly fans a folded palm frond. Another unrolls a small scroll, muttering phrases that blend devotion and dermatology. May your pores open to Ra, may your blemishes not shame the night. It's oddly comforting. You've had worse spa days. Then comes the eyebrow oil. Apparently, gods notice eyebrows. The mixture here contains crushed galena, a lead-based mineral that gives your brows a metallic sheen. The downside? Well, you're technically smearing poison on your face, but the upside? You sparkle like a divine beetle under moonlight. Now someone's opening the crocodile dung jar. Yes, that's real. A special ointment made from powdered crocodile dung and milk is dabbed, gently, thankfully, along your torso. Egyptians believed it offered protection from disease, spirits, and possibly unwanted bedfellows. The smell is not ideal. But at this point, your olfactory system has either given up or ascended to another plane entirely. You blink. Your eyes feel heavy, not from tiredness, but from the perfumed smoke curling through the room. Braziers of incense send ribbons of sandalwood and pine toward the high ceiling, swirling around images of Nut, the sky goddess. Her outstretched body forms the ceiling itself, stars painted across her belly, a sleepy smile on her face. If anyone understands bedtime, it's Nut. Every now and then you hear a bell chime. That's the perfumer's assistant, marking the passage of each stage in the ritual. You are now officially marinated. If you stood up too quickly, you'd probably slide out of your sandals. A breeze stirs the curtains again. Somewhere in the distance, a hippo grunts in the Nile. It's not close, but it's definitely loud enough to ruin a nap. Ancient Egyptians had a complicated relationship with hippos. They were sacred, feared, and known to be terrible neighbours. You shift on your hard mattress, letting the last of the unguents settle. It's like sleeping in a spice rack. But underneath the heavy air and weirder ingredients, there's a rhythm forming, a flow of scent and silence, of ceremonial touches and soft words whispered in your name. And then, just when you think it's over, someone approaches with a final vial. This one is small, dark, and sealed with a wax lotus. The attendant cracks it open and touches the tiniest drop to your wrists. It's blue lotus oil, mildly narcotic, mildly euphoric, and deeply connected to dreams. You close your eyes, not because you're sleepy, but because everything else feels slightly unreal. You are no longer entirely here, nor entirely human. You're something fragrant, golden, sacred, and just a little bit oily. Your skin glistens like a sacred papyrus scroll left out in the morning dew. You smell like an exotic garden that caught fire, and then tried to apologize. And now, finally, it's time for phase 3. Spiritual foot maintenance and a skincare routine that might alarm a modern dermatologist. Enter the purification priests. These aren't your high-drama temple priests with golden leopard stoles. These are the more practical ones, part chaplain, part pedicurist, tasked with keeping your body temple-ready for its nightly voyage into the land of the dead. They come barefoot, heads shaved, linen robes immaculate. You wonder if they sleep at all, or just hover eternally in corridors waiting for ankles to bless. One kneels beside your bed and begins to wash your feet with water poured from a sacred alabaster flask. The water is cold, intentionally. The shock is meant to jolt your car, your spiritual essence, into alertness. You try not to kick him. Another priest chants softly while waving a feather wand over your toes. The fan is from a sacred ibis, and it smells faintly of lemon. You aren't sure if the chant is a blessing, a warning, or a very committed lullaby. It goes on for a while, then stops mid-sentence. No one explains why. And here's where things take a turn for the weird. A small copper mirror is held under your nose, not to check if you're breathing, but to reflect any wandering spirits that might try to sneak into your dreams. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic protection or an early version of sleep paralysis therapy. Either way, your nose feels important. Next comes the salve. It's thick, gritty, and smells like boiled onions and mint. It's made from crushed malachite mixed with animal fat and desert herbs, meant to protect your skin against both evil forces and dryness. It's smeared down your legs and arms with reverence. You're beginning to feel like a marinated statue. Then comes the neck charm. A string of tiny amulets, carved frogs, cobras, ankh symbols, and a little scarab beetle with a sleepy smile is draped around your collarbone, not for style. These are your nighttime guardians. Should a rogue demon wander into your dreams, it now has to face a clay frog named Wegaf, who radiates protective vibes. A servant approaches with a small bowl of something that looks like green hummus. It's not for eating. It's a paste made from fig sap and ground barley, rubbed on your chest to seal in breath. Egyptians took nighttime very seriously. You hear a sudden bark of laughter, not yours. One of the younger priests just stepped in sandal first into a trail of spilled incense ash. A quick glare from the elder silences him, but a corner of your mouth curls upward. Even pharaohs appreciate a bit of chaos. Now someone brings the crocodile oil. Again. Yes, this isn't the same as earlier. This oil is ritual grade, pressed from the fat of sacred crocodiles raised in temple pools. Apparently, it's believed to contain the essence of Sobek, the crocodile god of strength and protection. A few drops are rubbed on your chest, as if the gods themselves are tucking you in. The scent is swampy with a hint of sandalwood. They finish with your hands. First a wash, then the gentle placement of rings, each one inscribed with protective hieroglyphs. One bears the eye of Horus, another a depiction of Isis breastfeeding baby Horus. A third, curiously, features a cat batting at a sun disk. You suspect the artisan had a sense of humour. The room grows quieter. The priests bow low, then leave one by one. No doors slam, no sandals squeak. Just the slow hush of retreating linen and fading prayers. You're left alone again. But not really. Around you, the air still shimmers with oils and meaning. Your feet tingle from their icy bath. The bed's still unforgiving, but somehow this process, odd as it is, makes you feel more than royal. It makes you feel anchored, not just to this moment, but to some ancient rhythm of breath, skin, gods, and dust. And as you exhale, you swear you feel the amulet frog throb slightly against your chest, probably just your heartbeat. Probably. You lie still, your limbs heavy with oils, your brow glistening with frankincense. The chamber hums with that peculiar silence only palaces manage. Too quiet to trust, yet oddly soothing. And now, with your body thoroughly marinated and blessed, it's time for the part of the routine that makes bedtime feel more like a therapy session. Talking to statues. Yes, you have bedtime confessions. But instead of a journal or a kindly therapist, you speak to a carved head of Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and scribes. He's perched on a stand by your bedside, his stone beak slightly chipped from centuries of devotion. His eyes, painted with lapis and onyx, stare into the eternal void, or directly into your soul, depending on how much blue lotus you inhaled earlier. You lean slightly, just enough to rest your lips near the statue's ears. Technically, he doesn't have ears, but spiritually, he hears everything. This is the part of the night where you unburden yourself. Minor wrongdoings, unresolved quarrels, that time you forgot a priest's name mid-ceremony and just called him Papyrus Guy. You confess not because you're in trouble, but because the ancient Egyptians believed words had power. Spoken words shaped reality, even dreams. And so, each night, you whisper your regrets and wishes, hoping Thoth scribbles them down for Ra's review during tomorrow's solar commute. The chamber remains dim, the torchlight swaying gently. You glance up, and there he is, another statue, Osiris, serene and green-skinned, his arms crossed as if already sleeping. You don't speak to him. He listens in silence, being the god of the underworld and all. Too much conversation with Osiris and people start asking questions. Behind him, a painted relief of the goddess Mart watches you. Her ostrich feather quivers slightly in the breeze, though that might just be the oil fan swaying again. Still, you get the feeling she's judging the sincerity of your confessions. It's fine, you meant it. Probably. Then you do something that, if done in any modern bedroom, would get you strange looks. You extend your hand and touch the cool stone of the statue's base. Not knocking, not praying, just grounding. The ancient Egyptians believed this act helped tether the car, your spiritual double, to your physical self before sleep. Because the last thing you want is your spirit wandering off unsupervised. Historians still argue whether these nightly statue confessions were symbolic, or if the pharaohs truly believed they were heard and answered in real time. Either way, no one's ever found a "do not disturb" sign carved into a god's pedestal. You sigh. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because there's a weird comfort in being one part monarch, one part whispered poem. You've unburdened your thoughts, cleansed your body, and quite possibly creeped out an entire pantheon with your nightly ramble. Suddenly, there's movement in the shadows. But don't worry, It's just the servant responsible for adjusting the statue's orientation. Yes, someone's job is to make sure Thoth is always angled precisely toward the east, so that when you sleep, your prayers rise with the morning sun. You murmur one last thing, a thank you, maybe, or a wish for dreamless rest, or possibly a reminder to yourself not to overdo the crocodile balm tomorrow night. And then you roll slightly, back to your stiff gold frame bed, leaving the stone audience in your spiritual rear view. The room smells of incense, stone, and old thoughts. You're not sure if you feel lighter or simply more ancient. Above you, the ceiling begins to glow faintly, not with real light, but painted light. The stars have arrived. You're still lying flat, shoulders sunk into linen, neck arched on that unyielding headrest, when your gaze drifts upward to the ceiling. And there, above you, the heavens are painted in blue and gold. The goddess Nut stretches across the plaster in human form, her elongated body curving protectively from wall to wall. Her arms and legs touch the edges of the chamber like a canopy. Across her body, stars, tiny dots of white and yellow that gleam faintly in the flicker of torchlight. This isn't decoration, it's your calendar, your compass, your sky map for the night. You count the stars above Nut's outstretched arms, a meditative ritual practiced by insomniac pharaohs for centuries. Every point of light corresponds to a specific moment in the sky's eternal dance. Ancient priests would recite these constellations aloud, like a bedtime story written in orbit. Tonight's star, Sa, the precursor to Orion, rises just behind Nut's elbow. Good omen, supposedly. Unless it isn't. Historians still argue which star positions were auspicious and which just meant, watch out for crocodiles tomorrow. Your servant/astronomer tiptoes into the chamber, carrying a palm-sized bronze device. Not a clock. Clocks didn't exist quite yet. This is a maquette, an ancient tool that uses stars and a weighted plumb line to tell time. He kneels beside your bed, lines it up with a slit in the ceiling, and mutters something about fourth hour of the night. You nod, pretending to understand. You don't, but it sounds official. The ceiling isn't just celestial, it's prophetic. Painted on one edge is the journey of Ra's solar boat through the Duat. Each night the sun god sails through darkness, battling serpents, demons, and the occasional bureaucratic delay, before being reborn at dawn. As Pharaoh, you are connected to this journey. You're supposed to ride with Ra, to protect him, to make sure the sun comes back. No pressure. And that's why you sleep facing east. Your head points towards sunrise. Always. The orientation aligns your body with sacred geometry and prepares your soul for its nightly commute into the underworld. It also ensures that if someone tries to assassinate you in your sleep, they trip over your feet first. Practical and mystical. You turn your eyes toward the side wall, where a painted procession of baboons raises their tiny hands to greet the morning sun. This is not a joke. Sacred baboons were believed to sing at sunrise. Some pharaohs kept them as temple mascots. Others tried and regretted it. You've heard stories of one baboon who bit 3 scribes before breakfast, but tonight, the baboons on your wall are quiet, their hands raised in frozen devotion, their painted fur catching the flicker of your dying torch. You exhale slowly. The scent of kaifi lingers in the air. You wonder what dream awaits. A boat voyage with Ra, a stroll through the fields of reeds, or maybe just that recurring one where you forget your temple speech and show up in only a linen sash. Your astronomer whispers something about the dog star rising. Sirius, the bringer of the Nile flood. You nod again. This time, the name sticks. You've heard the elders say that when Sirius appears, all things renew. Crops, dreams, even tired kings. You blink. The ceiling stars seem to shimmer in rhythm with your breath. Nut's eyes stare downward, protective and distant. There's something strangely reassuring about sleeping under a painted goddess. She's always watching, she's always there. Outside, the palace wall creaks slightly, as wind shifts through the palm trees. A quiet note of reed flute drifts in from a distant guard post. You imagine he's playing to stay awake, but it works for you too. You let your fingers trace a line along the blanket. Linen woven so finely it could pass for silk. It smells of lotus and starch. Everything here is intentional. Every sound, every scent, every star. You are Pharaoh. You are map and myth and mortal, all at once. And as your eyelids lower, Nut's constellation-covered belly glows above you, like a lullaby stretched across the sky. You stir slightly, not from noise or discomfort, but because something shifts in the air. A gentle clink, a rustle, the scent of honeyed dates wafting past your nostrils. It's time for the part of the ritual few modern sleep routines include, offering midnight snacks to yourself. And to your future corpse. Yes, truly. An attendant glides in carrying a polished tray of small delicacies. Figs, dates, honey cakes shaped like ankhs, a dab of goat cheese, and a palm-sized goblet of fermented barley drink. Not enough to fill you, just enough to sustain your car, your life force, while it wanders through dreams. But the real meal? It isn't for you. Not this version of you anyway. Along the far wall, a small table rests beside a perfectly carved wooden model of your tomb. It's a scale replica, complete with painted sarcophagus and tiny shabti figurines, posed like they're already late for afterlife chores. Upon this table, your priest lays another tray of food, identical to yours. It's symbolic. Offering nourishment now ensures your spirit doesn't go hungry later. The logic is both comforting and mildly morbid. You reach for a date, its skin glossy, its sweetness nearly candied by the desert air. It sticks to your fingers as you bite, the sugar melting on your tongue. For a moment, you're not a living god reclining in moonlight, you're just someone savouring dessert at midnight, which frankly, makes you feel more divine than anything else. There's a tiny carved baboon on the edge of your tray. His face is smug. You name him Nibble. He's your snack guardian now. Historians still argue whether these dual meals were consumed every night or prepared only during ceremonial evenings. Some evidence suggests daily practice in royal households, others argue it was a festival-only indulgence. Either way, there's something reassuring about knowing your future mummy self is getting a slice of honey bread alongside your current incarnation. As you chew slowly, your priest begins the invocation of nourishment. It's less dramatic than it sounds, mostly a calm listing of ingredients offered to various gods, followed by a wish that you be granted dreams unmarred by hunger or longing. Practical, poetic, and also a little bit like ancient DoorDash. Next to the tray lies a small bowl of natron salt, Egypt's all-purpose wonder powder. It absorbs moisture, preserves things, and apparently works great for indigestion. The priest pinches a grain between his fingers and flicks it toward your sleeping mat, a nod to preservation, or maybe a preventative sprinkle. You're not sure. Nearby, a cat watches from the shadows. Not metaphorically, a real palace cat, lean, elegant, possibly divine, slips silently onto the tiles. She eyes your honey cake with casual arrogance before curling beneath your bed. Her name, you've decided, is Mehet. She'll appear again in your dreams, probably arguing with a hippo. And now, with your stomach warmed and your car satisfied, the final act of this edible ritual begins. You dip your fingers into a bowl of lotus water and trace a symbol on your chest, an ankh, looping across your skin with damp coolness. This is less for show and more for guidance. It's a symbolic compass, directing your essence through the night's journey. You lean back, your fingers still taste faintly of date syrup. The room is quieter now, as if the walls themselves have digested your offering. Somewhere outside, a lion growls, a long, low sound carried on the desert wind. But inside, everything is calm, sweet, stilled. Your eyes half close. In the flickering torchlight, the painted ceiling stars seem to swirl just slightly. Or maybe it's the barley drink. You're not sure. You remember something now. An old saying, murmured by a grandmother long past. A pharaoh never dreams alone. And maybe, just maybe, that's true. Because behind you, your second tray still sits untouched, a feast for the soul you'll one day become. You try to sleep. Truly, you do. But something's off. The bed hasn't changed. It's still as rigid as a royal proclamation. The headrest, as always, cradles your skull with the tenderness of a stone melon holder. The ceiling stars haven't wandered. The incense still curls like lazy snakes, and yet, your eyelids twitch, your jaw clenches. You hear the faintest sound that ruins everything, snoring. Not from you, of course. Pharaohs don't snore, officially, but from somewhere just beyond the curtain, an echoing, wet-throated sound, like someone dragging a hippo through gravel. It's one of the guards, or maybe the astronomer, hard to say. But once you hear it, you can't unhear it. This is not a modern problem. Ancient Egyptians were obsessed with sleep disturbances. Entire spells were written for banishing the noise of the wheezy one. One even suggests clapping 3 times while invoking a moon god. You try this. It only startles Mehet, the cat, who hisses at your elbow and disappears into the shadows. Servants reappear quietly, as if summoned by the tension in your eyebrows. One brings out a small bowl, gold-rimmed, filled with what looks like beeswax. He rolls it into 2 neat little cones and gently offers them to you. Golden earplugs. You smile. Finally. They slide in snugly, muffling the outside world until the snoring becomes the mere hint of a distant cow trying to play a didgeridoo. You return to stillness. But now, something itches. Your calf twitches. A faint tickle behind the knee. You freeze. Is it your linen wrapping? A stray feather? Or, Ra forbid, a scorpion? You don't move. Just breathe. An attendant rushes over with a bronze lamp and carefully inspects the bedding. Nothing. But just in case, he sprinkles a powder mix of natron and ground rosemary along the edges of the mattress, a time-honored ritual for warding off nighttime biters. You'd ask if it works, but the alternative is not trying it. So, onward. As the quiet returns, your mind drifts to ancient texts, papyrus scrolls describing pharaohs who couldn't sleep for nights, their dreams blocked by curses, indigestion, or misplaced amulets. One tale describes a king haunted by the spirit of a servant he forgot to bury with enough bread. Another tells of a queen who heard whispers in her sleep, only to discover her bed frame had been made from wood stolen from a temple. Historians still argue whether these were cautionary tales or the earliest known "don't blame me, blame the bed" excuses. You shift, this time intentionally. The oil on your skin has absorbed enough to stop sticking to the linen. Your amulet chain rustles faintly. The blue lotus scent remains, just subtle now, like the memory of a dream you haven't had yet. A lullaby begins somewhere in the hallway. Not sung, hummed. A servant's voice, half melody, half breath, echoing through the palace corridors, like smoke through papyrus reeds. The tune is old. You don't recognize the words, but your bones feel like they do. You sigh, then chuckle, because someone, maybe even you, once commissioned a 300-person temple choir to perform sacred chants each sunrise, and yet tonight, what's helping you sleep is one bored servant humming to herself while cleaning a brazier. The snoring has stopped. Or you've stopped noticing it. Either way, it's progress. Your limbs settle again. No more itches, no more bites. You feel less like a ceremonial roast, and more like yourself again. Then comes a light tapping. Not a knock. Just a gentle, "Let me pass," from the breeze itself, pushing through the ceiling vent. You feel it drift across your chest. It's not cold, just moving. And in that moment, all your rituals, ointments, invocations, and golden earplugs seem to swirl together into something soft, something human. Sleep, it turns out, can't always be forced. Sometimes it arrives not with sacred chants or crocodile oils, but with silence earned, rituals done, and a breeze carrying forgotten songs through stone halls. You close your eyes. You don't need dreams yet. Just this stillness. Just this breath. Just this perfect pause. You're not asleep yet, but you're definitely drifting. Your body feels lighter now, as if the air has thickened just enough to cradle your limbs in invisible linen. You're on the edge of something. Maybe a dream, maybe the duat itself. And just when your consciousness begins to melt like beeswax under the torch, a sound nudges you back. music. Not the hum from before, this is structured, deliberate. Plucked strings, the low, watery trill of a wooden flute, a slow rhythm like a heartbeat played on stretched skin. Possibly a drum, possibly someone tapping a bowl of lentils in time. Lullabies in ancient Egypt weren't just for children, royal adults had them too, composed to guide the soul gently from wakefulness into the divine realm of sleep. It's said that musicians were chosen not for talent, but for how dreamlike their playing made the listeners feel. You can see why. The sound seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, like the Nile itself, whispering in a forgotten language. You recognize the melody. It's one of your favorites. It's called the Breath of Ma'at, a tune believed to balance the heart and dispel dreams of chaos. According to one scroll, hearing it before sleep ensured your soul wouldn't wander into any unpleasant metaphysical neighborhoods. You believe it. You always sleep better with it playing. And you're not alone. A soft flutter from the other side of the room signals the arrival of your night animals. No, not real animals. These are ritual creatures, trained or symbolic companions, chosen to embody qualities you wish to carry into the next day. Tonight there's a goose named Hetep, calm and unusually well-behaved, fluffed into a loaf beside your bed. A monkey sits in a high alcove, tail curled around a torch stand, eyes half-lidded in drowsy approval. And a tiny dog, more fluff than bark, circles twice on a silk rug, then drops into a sigh loud enough to ruffle your foot blanket. They are not pets, not exactly. They're part lullaby, part guard, and yes, their placement is intentional. The goose represents watchfulness, the monkey, cleverness, the dog, loyalty. And all three apparently help absorb nightmares. You're not entirely convinced of the science, but it's tradition. Plus they're soft, and Hetep's feathered breathing rhythm is oddly contagious. The lullaby continues. Now a new layer, voices. Not words, just vowel sounds. Smooth and round, blending with the instruments. 3 female voices, priestesses of Hathor, goddess of love, music and sleep. They sit cross-legged behind a screen mostly hidden, their hands moving like wind through papyrus. Their singing rises and falls, never pushing, always circling back to that same haunting cadence. You feel your pulse slowing to match it. Historians still argue whether royal lullabies were improvised nightly or drawn from a set cycle of sacred verses. Some temples kept papyrus archives of dream hymns, catalogued by tone and intention. For peace, for fertility, for protection from giant snakes. Tonight's feels like one written for quiet joy, or maybe just for relief. Even pharaohs have long days, and sometimes, like tonight, you just want to feel like someone's rocking the universe until it nods off. One of the priestesses strikes a chord that vibrates through your ribs. Your breath catches. The sound resonates like something remembered from before you were born. Even the painted baboons on the wall look like they're swaying a little. The air, thick with blue lotus, now carries a new note, milk and cardamom, faint and warm. A final offering burns on a tiny clay dish near your bed, smoke spiraling into an almost perfect coil. Everything aligns. The music, the scent, the rhythm of your heart, the animals at rest. You could sleep now. Maybe you already have. Or maybe this perfect stillness, this celestial hum is the dream. And if it is, you don't want to wake up just yet. Your body is still. Your thoughts drift like boats without oars. And just as you're slipping deeper into the folds of night, someone quietly slides something under your mattress. Don't worry, it's intentional. Ancient Egyptians believed that what you slept on mattered just as much as what you slept in. And beneath that elegant cedarwood bed frame lies a carefully arranged lineup of amulets. You may not feel them, but they're there, humming in their own invisible language. Tonight's lineup includes the usual suspects: a frog-shaped amulet for fertility and safe transformation, a miniature blade-shaped charm to sever evil influences, a protective eye of Horus carved into lapis lazuli, and a tiny figure of Taweret, the hippo goddess of childbirth and sleep. Taweret is especially important. She's got a big belly, lion's paws, and the general demeanor of someone who would slap a demon with a sandal if it tried to sneak under your bed. There's even a belief that placing her amulet near your feet stops nightmares from climbing upward. You find this strangely comforting. The amulets are placed with careful orientation, north, south, east, and west, each aligned with cardinal directions and the sacred flow of the Nile. According to temple scrolls, this layout forms a protective net of Maat, ensuring order triumphs over chaos as you sleep. Historians still argue whether this net was spiritual geometry or just ancient feng shui. Either way, the symmetry is soothing. A servant whispers a brief chant while arranging them. You hear fragments: breath to the lungs, coolness to the heart, sight to the dreaming eye. It's not loud enough to follow, but the cadence presses gently on your mind, like a hand on a shoulder saying, "Rest now." And then, the final step, the placement of the dream seal. It's not as dramatic as it sounds. A single glyph, drawn in ochre ink on a sliver of linen, is tucked beneath your pillow, or more accurately, under your stone headrest. The symbol varies each night. Tonight's is the hieroglyph for shed, meaning to rescue or to deliver. A good choice if your dreams take you through the choppier parts of the underworld. You're now officially amulet-armored, spiritually GPS tagged, and cleared for astral departure. You close your eyes, then open them again, just briefly. A flicker catches your attention. The gentle glow of a polished stone set in the nearby wall. It's not a torch. It's fails, a glazed ceramic tile designed to shimmer in moonlight. The tile shows a lotus flower opening with the dawn. It's been embedded near your sleeping space since your first coronation night. Your gaze softens. You remember that night, the mix of fear and power, the priest's trembling hands as he placed the first amulet under your bed, the heavy scent of cedar, the 1,000 whispered blessings, and you remember thinking, will I ever truly sleep again? Tonight, it seems, maybe you will. You shift slightly. The amulet chain around your chest makes the faintest metallic sound. Nothing breaks, nothing aches. Even Mahet, your nocturnal feline companion, seems satisfied. She's returned to the foot of your bed, curled into a perfect spiral, paws tucked under her chin like a sleeping deity. You wonder if the amulets guard her too, or if maybe she's guarding you. The torches dim now, one by one. Not extinguished, just lowered, allowed to flicker at their lowest flame, casting long, sleepy shadows over the muralled walls. Above you, Nut stretches on, her star-painted belly unchanged. The baboons on the wall still raise their hands to the invisible sun, and beneath you, a collection of charms hums a silent chorus into the folds of linen and time. Sleep is near now, and this time, you think it will stay. You feel the hush shift again, subtly, like the palace walls themselves, just exhaled. And with that breath comes the final, most delicate stage of your nocturnal rite: dream control. In one corner, a low table has been arranged with remarkable precision. A strip of fine linen, 2 obsidian bowls, a short reed pen, and a wafer-thin clay tablet no bigger than your palm. Tonight, these humble objects form the cockpit of your subconscious voyage. A dream scribe steps forward. She is neither priest nor servant, but something in between. A specialist in sleep, the way a navigator is a specialist in stars. Her shaven head gleams in lamplight, a faint smear of indigo lines her eyelids in the shape of protective falcon wings. Without a word, she moistens the reed pen in one bowl, a mixture of crushed blue lotus petals and water, and writes a single hieroglyph in deep azure ink on the linen strip. Nefer, good. The Egyptians believed a written word could radiate intent. Tonight, that single sign will serve as an anchor, steering your dreams toward calm currents. She wraps the strip loosely around your right wrist. The scent of lotus is gentle, narcotic, and just a little sweet, enough to coax your mind into softness without tipping it into oblivion. A servant ties a matching strip around your left ankle, ensuring the pull of goodness runs the full length of your body like a low-voltage spiritual current. But intent must be stated aloud, so the scribe leans close and whispers a tiny litany against your ear, 3 lines, all beginning with "May you." May you drift where the cool waters flow. May you see only that which brings joy. May you rise at dawn unburdened. The words slide into your skull and settle behind your eyes, warm and weightless. You feel your breathing slow, matching the hidden drumbeat of your heart. Next comes the obsidian bowl. The scribe dips her finger into a thick, pearly salve, then draws a simple door shape on your forehead. 2 vertical lines, 1 horizontal. This, she explains, in a voice barely louder than wind, is the gate of Saw, a symbolic threshold the Ka must cross to enter dream realms. Historians still argue whether such markings were literal portals or placebo for anxious rulers, but nobody disputes their longevity. Tablets from the Middle Kingdom describe identical door sigils right down to the dot at the lintel, a torch to light the passage. She steps aside. A priest of Thoth appears, carrying a tiny alabaster flask. Inside, powdered opium mixed with honey, Egypt's most serious sleep tonic. You do not drink it, you simply inhale its vapor as he fans the flask beneath your nose. Warmth flows out from the back of your skull, softening neck and shoulders until even the stone headrest feels like down. A third attendant lifts a miniature bronze mirror. Your reflection flickers in torchlight. Under the door sigil, your eyelids twitch. Your pupils impossibly seem to darken further, like wells filling with ink. The attendant tilts the mirror right, then left, murmuring a protective spell to seal wandering shadows. The mirror is believed to freeze any malicious spirit that tries to leap in via reflective surfaces. You choose to believe it works, better safe than spiritually hijacked. Finally, the dream scribe brings the clay tablet and presses its cool surface to your bare chest. It holds a fresh impression, the image of a sleeping jackal curled around a moon. When she removes it, the clay retains the warmth of your heartbeat. She will place it near the foot of your bed. By morning, priests will study any cracks that form overnight, divining whether omens visited you. Think of it as the world's earliest sleep tracker, no Bluetooth required. Everything is ready. Wristband, ankle band, door sigil, protective mirror, opium honey breeze. The scribe retreats, her sandaled feet whispering against polished stone. A torch is snuffed, then another, until only one remains at the far side of the chamber. Its flame the size of a cupped flame in a windless desert. Silence lengthens in satisfying increments. Breath by breath, you cross the invisible line between wakefulness and dream. You feel as if you are standing on the prow of Ra's night boat, the river of stars yawning out before you. You taste lotus and honey on the back of your tongue, and somewhere, everywhere, a single word pulses like a heartbeat inside your skull. Nefer, Nefer, Nefer. The door painted on your forehead warms. It opens. You drift, not with a jolt, not with a sigh, but with the subtle feeling of stepping sideways into another room, one made of water, clouds, and old memories you didn't know you had. This is the dream space, or at least, this is what the ancient Egyptians believed it looked like. It starts in a boat, naturally. A long reed bark, lacquered in white resin and trimmed in gold. It floats, not on the Nile, but on a river made of stars. Above you, constellations shimmer and ripple like fish beneath glass. This isn't imagination, this is what you were trained for. Dreaming was a skill, a ritual, and for someone like you, a pharaoh, it was a form of navigation. Priests had manuals for this, which symbols to look for, which creatures to avoid, which god forms meant you were doing it right. Dreaming was like chess, with cobras. You glance down. You're wearing a loose linen tunic, different from the ornate bedclothes you drifted off in. On your chest is the faint outline of the Ankh symbol, traced in ink back in the waking world, still glowing here like a tiny sun. It keeps you anchored, supposedly. Around you, the dream sways. One moment, you're floating past giant papyrus stalks that hum with music. The next, you're standing atop a pyramid, watching the night fold inward like the petals of a closing lotus. It all feels real, but not quite. Touchable. You step forward. The floor beneath you, whatever it is, shifts, but doesn't give. A voice calls out, not from the side or behind, but from within. It's familiar, like your own voice after it's travelled through stone halls. It says, "Come to the Garden of Reeds." Ah, the dream's main event. The Garden of Reeds, or Sekhet Aru, was the ancient Egyptian version of paradise. Lush, eternal fields, glistening rivers, barley taller than you. All souls of the worthy ended up here. Which means your subconscious has decided to do a test run. Always good to know the neighbourhood early. You walk. Your sandals leave no print. Ahead, the grass glows green-blue, luminous from within. A golden ibis nods as you pass. A jackal offers a single blink. Then the sound begins, soft, pulsing, like the heartbeats of every ancestor who ever lived. Each beat presses lightly on your chest, not heavy, not loud, just present. Dream control wasn't just about scenery. It was about insight. Ancient dream interpreters believed dreams carried direct messages from the gods, veiled in metaphor. A falcon? Good fortune. A crumbling statue? Trouble ahead. A runaway hippo? Possibly indigestion. Possibly a warning about your brother's political ambitions. Historians still debate whether these dreams were seen as divine truth or elaborate reflections of one's waking guilt and glory. The Egyptians didn't separate sleep and spirituality the way modern people do. They stacked meaning into every whisper and shadow. In your dream, you pause beside a pool, a mirror-like surface. You see yourself, not as a pharaoh in full regalia, but simply as you, human, mortal, breathing. This reflection doesn't move on its own. It matches you exactly. It waits. You lower your head, place your fingers on the water. The ripples spread, and for a moment, everything blurs. Then you hear laughter. It's not yours. It's the sound of a child somewhere between now and long ago. You turn, and there, in the reeds, is a small figure with eyes like polished onyx and hands clutching a papyrus scroll. The child waves, says nothing. But you feel it. This is memory, not prophecy. A piece of you, forgotten, brought back for inspection. The scroll he holds? Blank, not yet written. You take a step forward. He smiles once, drops the scroll, and vanishes into mist. When you look down, the scroll is gone, but the word Nefer echoes again in your ears. You awaken slightly, not into the world, but into the sense that the dream is ending, time's ebbing. The symbolic boat is returning. A pale figure waits at the shore. Not a god, not a beast, just a woman with a lantern. She does not speak. She lifts the light. You nod. And just like that, the dream folds in on itself, like a perfectly made bed at the end of the night. You're not quite awake, but you're almost home. You return slowly. First comes sensation, the awareness of your own breath, the faint tug of linens over your chest, the still slick trace of blue lotus on your skin. Then sound. A bird calling from far beyond the walls. One long note. Then silence again. You haven't opened your eyes. Not yet. But you're here. Awake in the ancient way, before light and before thought, drifting just below the surface of morning. The air has changed. It's cooler now, laced with the earliest breath of dawn. Somewhere out in the palace courtyard, a flame is relit. A torch crackles. A footstep echoes. You can sense it, the world turning toward morning. But there's still one more ritual left. Final prayers. A temple boy enters quietly, carrying a shallow bowl of water infused with petals. He doesn't speak. No one does. You extend your right hand, and he pours the water gently across your palm. It's a small gesture, cleansing the sleep from your body, purifying your spirit before the return of Ra. The priests file in once more, fewer this time. No oils, no ointments, just voices. Low, even, rhythmic chanting. You recognize the words, even if you've never quite memorized them. A litany of rebirth, an offering to the sun god for another safe return. And, perhaps more humbling, a thank you for letting you wake up at all. Ancient Egyptians didn't assume they'd return from sleep. Night was not simply rest, it was death in miniature. Each rising of the sun, a resurrection, a second chance. One priest places a small reed scroll near your bed. Upon it, the dream scribe has transcribed fragments of your vision, symbols scrawled in the same blue ink she used to draw the door on your forehead. An ibis, a scroll, a moon, a child. and the word never circled 3 times. You smile faintly. So, the dream mattered. The amulets under your bed are carefully retrieved, one by one, dusted and kissed, then returned to their cedar box. Even the clay tablet, the one that warmed on your chest, is checked for lines or fractures. None. A sign, perhaps, that you were untroubled. Your night animals are gone now. Hetep, the goose, no longer loafs by your side. The monkey, the dog, they vanished like dream smoke. Only Mehet, your cat, remains, blinking at the brightening sky through slitted eyes. She yawns, turns, and disappears under a nearby bench, already done with the morning. The final torch is extinguished. The chamber is now lit only by the suggestion of sunrise. Through a carved opening in the east wall, you see the first pinkish glow touching the tip of a distant obelisk. The silhouette of Nut, painted across your ceiling, begins to fade as real stars retreat from view. You sit up. The linen sheet falls in a crumple around your waist. The headrest, hard and cold, is set aside with care. A servant brings your day robe, but you don't put it on just yet. Not until you whisper one last sentence to Thoth, the ibis-headed god whose statue still watches from the corner. "Thank you," you murmur, "for the journey." Because even if it was only a dream, it meant something. The gods haven't answered. They rarely do. But that doesn't matter. You are here. You are whole. You are awake. And as the temple bells begin their morning chime across the river, you rise from your bed of cedar, from your night of fragrant rituals and cosmic sailing, and you step barefoot onto the polished floor. You have slept like a god. Now, it's time to rule like one. Let your eyes remain closed now. You don't need to rise like a pharaoh, or wrap yourself in linens, or smell faintly of crocodile oil. All you need to do is rest. Imagine yourself still in that chamber, where the air is cool, and the ceiling still glows with painted stars, and the sky goddess Nut stretches overhead, a living lullaby draped across time. Breathe slowly, like the Nile on a still morning. You're lying on a gold-framed bed, but it feels like clouds now. The stone headrest? It's softened. Your limbs are warm, weightless, calm. Outside, the desert wind curls through palm fronds. A flute echoes, a bird calls, but inside, all is still. You've travelled far tonight, not in miles, but in memory, myth, and imagination. Through oils and stars, through dreams and gods, through laughter and lotus, and now, nothing is expected of you. No decisions, no marching, no thrones. Just this stillness, this space between sleep and waking. Let it hold you a little longer, and when you are ready, maybe not now, maybe later, let the morning find you slowly, because tonight you slept like a pharaoh, and tomorrow? Well, that can wait.